Hello.
Andrew Bell,
Hello.
how are you, sir?
Good, thanks.
What time is it now in New Zealand?
Uh, it's 10:06 according to my computer in the morning. Saturday, 5 December, 10:07 it just says.
What town do you live in?
Christchurch.
Right. Oh, how are you recovering from the earthquakes?
Oh, it's not too bad, but like, well, what are we like? In February it will be 10 years since it happened, next February. And like if you go into the city, there's still some fairly large swathes of just ground where there were buildings and things. So yeah, it's people have adapted, and they've by and large come back from it, but there are still ongoing issues even this long after.
My spiritual community had its World Congress in Christchurch, I think not too long before the earthquakes.
Yeah. When do you remember?
I believe it was February of 2010.
Yeah, that would have more or less been about a year before they happened.
Yeah, maybe
Well,
it was later.
There was a large one. At first, there was a large one centered kind of out to the south, sort of southeast, and that did some damage, but then it was later on. That was in the sort of September of 2010, but then in the February one, that was centered much closer to the center of Christchurch, and that was the one that really wreaked havoc and killed people.
Well, let's talk about postcards. Was last year your first year of doing the Postcard Fest?
No. I did it through, I got alerted to it by Therese Clear, because I was in this sort of international group of poets with her that used to do this thing that was organised here in New Zealand, and called the Tuesday Poem. And she was the first one that alerted me to the Postcard Fest. And so I did it, but then I don't know if I sort of fell off the communication tree or something, and I didn't do it for a few years, and then I did it again this year.
Back in the
saddle.
I think
this was the second one I did.
Excellent. When you first heard about the Postcard Fest, what did you think? I mean, you obviously had a good opinion because you've done it a couple of times, but when you first heard about it, what did you think it would be like, and was it like your expectations?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I just thought it sounded like, this great idea that you write this bunch of small poems that would fit on a postcard and send them off to this list of people, a month's worth of people, and then you get a month, you'd get all these postcard poems back from. So yeah, it was pretty much, I think this year was different obviously from the first year that I experienced it, because of for the COVID, and because a lot of the poets were naturally coming out of the States. So I still don't think I've got all the I sent out to the 30 or 31 people on my list, and I still don't think I've had all the replies. I think that they sort of seem to dribble in over time, whereas the first time I did it, I think it was much more constant, because people's lives were being disrupted.
And it was a concentrated period of time, which it will be again, but the
Yeah,
fest stretched out for several months, depending on what group you were in. I
yeah.
found out today that someone in group one signed up and didn't send out cards. And
Oh, okay.
we're going to have to send out the real POPO to that person's house. So it could be trouble. How does postcard poetry, your participation in the fest, augment your own personal poetry practice?
I think, well, it just gives you a kind of a great incentive to, write a bunch of stuff like quite in a concentrated burst. So, I mean, normally I would write longer poems, but the practicalities of the postcard is, you have to keep it to a certain sort of chunky size. I just thought it was a good, a good incentive to write, a bunch of poems in a short period of time. And yeah.
Take us through your method. When you sit down, you've got the list, you've got stamps, you've got postcards. Do you make your own postcards, and then how do you compose them generally?
Well, this time around, I decided that I would make my own postcards, and I don't know what the US post is like, but the New Zealand post, they're very specific on that it can't be, more than a certain dimensions. And at first I inquired because I thought perhaps just, from a practical point of view, I thought perhaps I'd do my postcards, but I'd put them inside an envelope. But they said, oh no, then if you did that, it was going to cost you like twice the amount. And since I was posting most of mine to the States, it was a reasonable postage. So yeah, I created all mine just on sort of reasonably stiff card. And what I decided to do was, I thought it'd be interesting. I reproduced my own photos. I went through my photos on the computer, and I found ones which I thought were interesting, that would stimulate me to, the image would stimulate me to create something. And so I'd print them off and glue them onto the card, and then I used the images to inspire me to write that particular poem for that particular person.
So did you write all ekphrastic poems?
No, not at all. No, and I don't think I wrote any.
Well, the ones based on the image is what I'm speaking of.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting my terms confused. You probably know a lot more poetic terms than I do.
Well, ekphrastic poems, it's a Greek word that goes back obviously several thousand years, and a work of art inspired by or about another work of art. So a postcard poem about your photograph would qualify as an ekphrastic poem.
Yeah. In that case, they all were. Yeah, no, I was thinking of, sorry, I was getting confused. That's acrostic, isn't it? The poem where you put the letter.
Yeah, acrostic where you have letters going down.
A word and then, yeah.
And in fact, there's one, I think the Psalms in the original language were all acrostics. So it's a very old form as well.
Oh, wow. In the Hebrew, in the Bible?
In Aramaic, I think.
Oh, Aramaic. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Right. Cool.
Well, that's great that you have a photography practice that aids your poetry practice. What are you taking pictures of?
Well, I went into, I've got a Mac, and we've got, or they just call it photo. I think it used to be called iPhotos, now it's called photos. A lot of them, you know, wouldn't have been particularly suitable to write poems on, just, you know, family shots and various things like that. But I also like to just take pictures of, you know, quite like interesting landscapes, and I've always, I seem to have an eye out for like quirky things, you know, sometimes. I don't know, it's hard to think of an example now, so it's a while since I was doing it, but you know, like sometimes you'll see a sign or something like that, there'll be some sort of quirky juxtaposition perhaps of a sign and something happening, and yeah, so it's very wide ranging. I just like to take I just keep my eye out for the slightly unusual and things like that, you know, or just interesting things. An image that comes to mind, which I didn't write a poem of, but I took the other day, is there's a near where I live, they've made this quite cool children's playground with all these various things for the kids to play on, and there'd been some heavy rain, and there was this part in the playground where there was this like natural dip, and there were all these seagulls, because it's right by the ocean. There are all these seagulls bathing in it, you know, and flicking the water up, and I just took this picture of these seagulls because it just looked so funny, them improvising their bath, you know, in this kids' playground.
Fantastic. Very visceral image. I love it. I see seagulls out my window right now, and we don't even have an ocean. Well, we're next to a lake. We have an ocean not too far away, the Pacific. The same ocean you have, in fact.
Yes, exactly.
The Pacific Ocean.
So you don't live in Seattle itself.
We live right in the city, south part of town. We have a nice view of the Cascade Mountains, of which Mount Rainier is one. I'll quickly turn there you can see what we look at.
Oh, wow.
It's a nice, yeah.
Yeah.
We love it here. So other than the fact that you get to a lot of writing done, and you get postcards in the mail, which is fun, and other things, any other things about the fest that you love about it?
Yeah, I like that, you know, the whole sort of concept of the spontaneous poetry creation, you know, because that's what I really try to do with my poems, with these, you know, because like ordinarily, as you know, you might write several drafts of a poem, but I just like that idea of the spontaneous creation, and you know, so I'd get these photos that I was using to inspire me to write the poems, and I'd just be kind of looking at them and thinking of the kind of angle I was going to come at for the poem, and then sort of away I'd go, you know, and what I put down there had to be what it was, you know, and I found that quite enjoyable and quite liberating, because you weren't thinking, you know, I'm going to come back to this in a week's time or whatever. You're thinking, oh, I'm writing it for this person now, and this is how it'll be, you know.
Yeah, that's part of the charm for me as well, is to get that sense of spontaneity, and to liberate yourself from the critical nature of the editor's mind. You know, after the fest is over, you might go over and fine tune them or clarify, but I think that if extensive revision is necessary, Denise Levertov said, then the poem didn't incubate long enough, which is always a risk with POPO, because you got to write 31 in 56 days, and it's a lot of writing. Do you have a poem of your own from the fest that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, goodness, I didn't prepare. Hang on.
I'll hang on.
I will.
I'll have a sip of coffee.
Yep, I'll just have to. there. No, that's not what we want. Why aren't you opening? Where are you? Here we are. Okay. I can't exactly recall the picture with this. Are you right there? Can you hear me?
Okay. I can hear you fine. Yes.
Okay. I think this was one I took on a photo. It went back to a whale watching trip we took from Western Australia when we saw all these amazing humpbacks. So this one was called The Last Fluke. Oh, what I did with mine too, which some people didn't, was I actually typed mine out and I created them on the computer and then glued them onto the card, because I found from previous experience, I think my handwriting's quite neat, but people often send you handwritten ones, which is lovely and has that lovely personal touch, but sometimes some people's handwriting's really hard to decipher, and there'd be words I could never figure out. So anyway, this one's called The Last Fluke. Once you hunted my kind without mercy for the riches in our bodies. Now you pay to watch us from boats and marvel at our gargantuan magnificence. Now only the orca and the shark hunt us, but still you poison the ocean with plastic and oil until you watch our last fluke wave goodbye.
And there you have it, a fitting moment to end on. I'm grateful for your participation in the fest. And
can I just add one more thing?
Yes.
I don't know, only you would know this as a coordinator, but there's not much. I've been trying to encourage other people now down under, so to speak, to get involved, because largely the participation, I think all the people on my list were either lived in the States with the odd Canadian, or there was one or two people, I think, from the UK. But one thing that really came through this year, and it was kind of sad for me, because there was definitely from a number of the poets that I received cards from in the States, was the COVID thing had definitely coloured their experience, you know, and it was quite sad. There was poetic sort of reflection on the isolation and being shut inside and all these various things. So, you know, it just made me, because we're a small country, you know, there's 5 million of us, we're surrounded by the Pacific Ocean, and we happen to have a very good Prime Minister who acted, you know, in such a way that minimized the effects, you know. And I know even now, with unfortunately sorry to introduce a political note, but, you know, with unfortunately the orange-haired loony that was in charge of you guys, you know, I mean, it's we just look and we think, you know, those of us have been to the States and we know American people. I've even got American cousins, you know, we look from afar and we just feel saddened at how much COVID has, you know, cut a swathe through America, and how many people who have died, who probably, a lot of them probably quite unnecessarily. So that was a real difference this year, you know. I in a number of poems that were sent through to me, there was that real, I don't know, poignant echo of the COVID experience in America. And, you know, so I tried to write my poems in a way, hopefully, that we're sending off a little bit of hope to my American counterparts, you know, and saying, oh, well. So let's hope, you know, now that you've got Biden, and if the orange-haired loony will he'll probably be dragged out by the Secret Service. Sadly, we look from afar and wonder how the hell it's going to happen. But
You know, and,
let's hope it gets turned around.
the orange hair would look good in an orange suit, many people believe, which is, of course, what they give you in prison.
Yeah.
Well, it just shows how necessary it is to have people from other countries involved in the fest, and ideally someday many other languages rather than English.
Yeah.
And you know, make someone go to the Google Translate and get some sense, or go to a friend who speaks the language and get some sense of what's being communicated. But we're very grateful for people around the world who are patient with us, who know that at least 51.5% of Americans have some sense of responsibility as world citizens, and the rest, we hold out hope that they will get through whatever angst or dissatisfaction they're trying to express by supporting such an obviously unfit person who essentially has abandoned his post to lead the country through a difficult time, through the pandemic. And I do believe that justice is eventually served in all things, and I'm holding out hope that this will also be the case in this country. But of course, I'm also a bioregionalist, so if the country were to split up into 9 differing regions, it might be a better way to go. I don't know.
I know that Therese Clare told me that, you know, Washington, your state, had done quite well, and your governor, I think you have a Democratic governor, and you know, she said over there you hadn't fared too badly. But I heard a terrible thing on the news the other day about North Dakota, where the hospitals were just, you know, crumbling under the weight of it.
Yeah, many states are having that problem where hospitals are at capacity. And The Onion, which is a satirical newspaper.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, I know The Onion. Yeah.
They said South Dakota was considering their new tourism slogan, "Come here to die." So I love The Onion for a little dark humor. And
Yeah.
Andrew, such a pleasure to connect with you. This is a great thing for me to meet people, and do let us know what we can do to get more Kiwi folk involved in POPO.
Well, I'm definitely spreading the word down here. I've been putting it around the local poetic communities, and even trying through the national community, you know, and saying it's a great thing to be involved in, you know, because you feel that sense of poetic community globally, you know, and like we were saying, even though I got these poems with the shadow of COVID hanging over them, I'm thinking in some ways poetry was not only an emotional outlet for the poet and for the readers, there's also that slight sort of sense of citizen journalism going, you know, with the poets, you know.
Absolutely, witnesses, no question about it. That's one of the reasons why we moved the fest up. So do send us a bio and a link to your website. Thank you for publishing my poem on your site. I'm very grateful for that.
Oh, no worries. Yeah.
And wishing you continued health, happiness, and prosperity, and postcard fun.
Yeah, you too, Paul. It's
Thanks,
a great
Andrew.
thing you're doing there.